Hello everyone, this is part 36 of What If Naruto Had a Hug That Changed Everything, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Be sure to like and subscribe, it gives me more motivation. Enjoy. Nightfall in Carter City. Naruto and Jiraiya were roaming the empty streets of the long-winded roads in their tiresome quest to find the next Hokage of Konoha. Jiraiya himself thought that they were getting significantly closer to his old comrade when they stumbled upon this place, but he was getting rather tired after hours upon hours of searching. Naruto, however, was a little too occupied with the third and final step of mastering the Rasengan. Though it surprised Jiraiya as equally as it surprised himself, Naruto had passed the second stage with relative ease, although he instantly realized that he could no longer rely on the Kage Bushin to help him out in that department. Boosting his own chakra levels to their maximum had become somewhat of a knack for him rather than a chore. Maintaining it was another matter. As the two men walked, the black-clad blonde genin focused everything he was into maintaining his immense chakra into one tiny little ball, then he could say that he had officially got it down. Only problem was that the air ball he tried to focus it all into kept popping because of his lack of control. His frustration on the matter would have to wait, however. For now, it was time to rest. Naruto. In here, Jiraiya said while unconsciously smiling at what he almost called him. Wow. My mind must be screwed the F up if I was about to call him Minato. Damn. This near slip up, however, was not unnoticed by Naruto, who abruptly stopped his 100th attempt at maintaining all of his chakra and shot the white-haired mountain sage a questioning look. Mina, what now? Naruto said before he took a gander at the place that he was motioned to follow his teacher into. You've got to be kidding. I'm not old enough to go in there. At this, Jiraiya nearly fell over in exasperation. Now that's a load of bulls, Naruto. Don't think that I don't know what you and Sakura have gotten into last night. That has nothing to do with blush. Shut up, he mumbled with his head turned down. He's got me there, I guess. Jiraiya smiled. Come on. We should rest a little before we continue searching. Give that hand of yours a breather, he said before walking into the building with Naruto tailing behind. Once they were inside, they saw the usual, drunks and more drunks. As Jiraiya skimmed the area for an empty seat, a question re-emerged within Naruto's mind. Ero Sennin, could you remind me again what this Sunaughty person looks like again? The blonde shinobi asked. Instead of a straightforward answer, Naruto re-sheaved a chuckle that was greatly suppressed. He looked up only to see the said L with his cheeks puffed out and blue. When he finally regained himself, he wiped a tear from his eye. Ho 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 s. That was a good one, kid. I'm gonna have to use that one eventually, Jiraiya said out if chuckled. Naruto's eyes slowly fell into a squint as he realized what he just said. That wasn't a joke, L, he inwardly degraded. Well anyway, she's this really old lady with long blonde hair, deep brown eyes. Oh, and if any bodily indication, she's got the rack of a goddess, he said honestly while catching a gander at a certain bunch before squinting his eyes to make him out. Yeah, well, you're nuts if you think I'm gonna be looking after women's racks to find this old Sunad, Jiraiya yelled with a pointed finger. The woman who owned this name was accompanied by another attractive young lady with brunette hair, who was also holding a little pink pig with a red jacket on. The jacketless Sunad shot to her feet with her hands slammed upon the table. Jiraiya, what are you doing here? She asked in absolute shock. When Naruto took a gander at what the crazy old L was pointing at, his eyes squinted as well. Everything that Jiraiya had mentioned about Sunad seemed to be true. He certainly wasn't lying about that rack, that's for sure. Only thing that stood out the most was the fact that this old lady didn't look old in the slightest. She had the features of a recently matured woman, exploding with youthful grace and beauty. So, that's Sunad. Humph. Old lady, Wow, you actually had me going for that one, Ero Sennin. Sigh. I should have known, Naruto thought to himself as he surmised that maybe Jiraiya was just looking for a busty blonde bimbo to bang. Meanwhile, at the edge of the city itself, A red-coated figure, emanating a black aura, stood at the top of a building and gazed intently upon the bright full moon. It seemed so close to him that he would have tried to touch it if he were drunk or something, but he wasn't. Without warning, two more red-coated figures jumped into the fray and bowed respectfully to the larger, more dominant one. Nekoshi. Kitsune. Did you give him my message? The large brute questioned without facing them. Hi, Kuro-sensei, the two shinobi affirmed before breaking their bow. Kitsune spoke up, and if our calculations are correct, Tsunade-sama is well aware of your being here as well. HHMMHMHMHMHMHMHM. Excellent, my students. Excellent. Now all we do is wait, and our revenge will be complete, Kuro growled to himself before motioning for his students to approach him. Doing just that, Nekoshi and Kitsune approached their teacher, eagerly awaiting any other orders that he may have. Instead, they were in for one hell of a shock. Kuro whirled around before, with his large and powerful arms, yanked his longtime students into a near-crushing embrace. Though the force of this action wasn't that overwhelming, the whole nature of the ordeal was simply a mind-bender. S-sensei, they both questioned in unison at this very unusual action. The red-haired man pulled away from his students with a hearty smile directed towards them. 20 years. 20 flippin' years and you little SS have still remembered all that I taught you, he said with a proud tone of voice that neither of his students had heard in decades. Even when I was sealed within that damnable stone, I knew that you two would pull through. I'm proud of you too. You've both grown into superb warriors, Kuro said with his own touch of dark sincerity. Though he was still in shock from what was happening, Nekoshi smirked. TCH. Where'd this come from? He questioned. The mouse teacher pulled away from his students before immediately slamming both of his hands upon their heads, thus crashing them into the ground. Kuro smiled. Because I simply love you idiots, he declared before lifting his hands from both of their heads and turning his back to face the moon. Now both of you get up. Though they were both on the verge of passing out, Nekoshi and Kitsune staggered to their feet while trying to keep their shaky balance. Something has definitely got you wired up, sensei. What's the deal? Kitsune asked at this sudden outburst. Seriously, you're all, well, you know, not you. Wait, let me guess, it's the fact that all of our plans are finally piecing together, right? Your revenge, Naruto, all of it right, Nekoshi deduced. Hi he hey. It's not just that, my students, Kuro said without facing him, but I will fill you in at another time. For now, I must prepare for what is to come. Thud. The Akatsuki fiend whirled his head around only to see his students laid out on the ground unconscious. Oops. I think I struck their heads too hard. Konoha. Ino Yamanaka was nervously pressing her fingers together as she stood before a scowling Sakura. The task that the young blonde took upon herself was a little more agonizing than she would have hoped, but she managed to walk it out and finally admit to her sin. Ino's eyes trailed to the ground as she could no longer look Sakura in the eye. Sayahem Sakura, I. Well, yeah, I tried to get at him before, That is to say. It's okay Ino, Sakura interjected. I know. Look, I know I shouldn't have done it, but I was just so wait. What did you just say? Ino questioned with a stupefied expression. The pink-haired kunoiki gently ran her fingers through her own hair before shooting Ino a smile. I said it was okay. You don't have to apologize, she said. The bleached blonde girl was absolutely shocked by this. She expected a yelling, screaming Sakura hell-bent on her complete and utter destruction, but instead, she was told that what she did was okay. Sakura. What are you saying? Don't you realize how wrong that is? I should have never tried to make a move on him behind your back. I was just being selfish, Ino said with her face cringing at nearly every word she uttered. At this, Sakura's smile dropped immediately. Oh. Well, that's why I brought this, she said before revealing a glass in hand and shattering it over the left side of Ino's face, leaving several shards of it in her cheek. Naaaaaaaah. Ow. So how'd that feel, huh? What the hell? Instead of a worded response, Ino resheaved a swift and brutal kick to her C, lifting her off of her feet before plummeting to her knees, holding her bruised woman pride. Before she had too much time to yell in agony, the broad side of a sleek metal pole collided with the middle of her face, sending her crashing to her back with a bleeding nose. Naaahaa. Sakura, Ino cried before she tried to rise to her feet to at least defend herself, only to have the back of her knee nearly crushed by the same pole, thus bringing her down to the ground on that same knee. I told you to stay away from him, slut, Sakura said with an eerily calm demeanor before slamming the metal pole against Ino's lower back, folding her over almost completely. Letting out another lament of agony, Ino was helpless to defend against a cruel heel drop to the face that crashed her entire upper body into the ground. Sakura began dealing the helpless, screaming blonde several bone-breaking kicks to her side, combining those assaults with her trusty metal pole while spitting insults and wisecracks. While still taking the agonizing blows, Ino managed to rise to her feet only to have the back of her head slammed by Sakura's unforgiving pole. Falling to the ground nearly unconscious, Ino was then dragged by her hair to a nearby lake, where her head was dunked into. Sakura idly peered at her nails as she awaited the inevitable gurgles and squirms to starting bubbling up. When they did, the pink-haired savage hoisted her victim's head back up. So, ya gonna tell me why ya did it? Sakura questioned before lodging a kunai deep into Ino's thigh, gaining another shrill cry of pain. Hearing the blonde's screams, Sakura dunked her head into the water again for about 10 more seconds before simply throwing her entire body onto the ground away from the water. At this point Ino was sobbing and coughing hysterically due to the pure shock that she felt after being suddenly brutalized and nearly drowned by her best friend. Her face, head, back and legs, one being useless, were bruised and bruised. She struggled to lift herself to her elbows and crawl away from her merciless attacker. Sakura, please. You've taken all of his faranu hmyyygod, she shouted at the top of her lungs as she saw Sakura wielding a torch after taking a swig of gasoline. Without remorse, Sakura blew into her torch and doused Ino into a raging inferno, causing the girl to scream until her voice hoarse out while her arms and legs flailed wildly in every possible direction. Back in the plane of reality, a heavily sweaty Ino shot up to a sitting position with her teeth clinged down hard. Her breath was ragged and quick and her fists were clenched onto the ground, rending the soil into her GS. The frightened blonde frantically whipped her head from left to right several times to grasp where she was and finally deduced that she had dozed off. Finally able to relax enough, Ino unclenched her teeth and groaned in relief. She then tried to recall what had been happening before she dozed off and she quickly succeeded. She peered down to her side to see a sleeping Sakura snoring lightly beside her. Ino took one last look at her surroundings and remembered that it was one of Naruto's favorite spots. The spot where he can see pretty much all of Konoha from. The place where Ino made the biggest mistake of her life. The bleached blonde kunoichi looked up into the sky and saw that it was nighttime. She looked back down at the sleeping Sakura and smiled sadly. Don't think I don't know what you're up to, forehead, Ino thought to herself while she recalled how nice her pink-haired friend was acting towards her, but if you're thinking what I think you're thinking, then. Ino's thoughts trailed off as gandered upon Sakura, her worry filling her ever more. Ever since the pink-haired genin had invited her to dine with her, Ino had grown not only more curious but more suspicious as well. It stood to reason too. Only a day ago, Sakura always had a look that said, I will drag you down to the depths of hell if you look at me, because of how flirtatious she was being with Naruto, and now she acts as friendly as she did to her when they were kids. Something about it really rubbed Ino the wrong way, and for the first half of the day, she was frightened that Sakura would turn right around and go Super Demon B on her. There's just no way that you could possibly be genuinely friendly after all that happened. Damn it. What am I supposed to do about this? Ino pondered as she started to rise from the ground. Just then, Ino was struck with the memory of the good times they had that day. Even though she was highly uncomfortable at the beginning, she couldn't help but admit that she started to really enjoy the time that they spent together after a while. She remembered that she hadn't felt the pleasure of one's company like that in ages. Since her and Sakura were kids, to be exact. But with all of the good memories and nostalgic joy, came the feelings of dread and shame. She had tried to take Naruto away from her. Though she didn't realize it at the time, Ino was being majorly selfish and uncaring about how it would affect both Naruto and Sakura. With her pink-haired friend being so nice to her now, it almost made Ino want to jump out of her shell of deception and just flat out tell her what she had done, although, she already suspected that certain pink already knew. Without realizing it, tears of guilt welled within her eyes and her face became saddened. I'm so sorry Sakura. Carter City Bar. Are you challenging me, ya little brat? A fuming and drunk Tsunade yelled as she planted one of her feet upon the table that Naruto was standing upon after being dealt insult after insult. What? Little ol' me. Now why would I go and do a thing like that? Naruto said with sarcasm deesping from his voice. After taking just about all that he could stand from Tsunade's total lack of respect for the heroes of Konoha, Naruto finally broke and told her off to quite the extent. Though he was calm and collected about it, it was rather obvious to the bystanders, Jiraiya, Shizune and Tonton, that he was extremely pissed at the blonde Sannin. Not only had Tsunade insulted Naruto's own honor by calling him weak and a waste of time, but she had also slammed the legacy of his hero down to the ground and smeared it into a fossilized heap of nothingness. Oh yeah, it was on. Hey, you've got balls, kid. Meet me outside and we'll settle this, Tsunade hissed with the drunken intent to fight. In a mock gentleman fashion Naruto bowed, best first, he said, gaining a light twitch from Tsunade due to his attitude. Seeing the whole thing despite his best efforts to stop it, Jiraiya sighed in defeat, a drunk Tsunade and a hot-headed Naruto. No. Just. No, he muttered to himself. Shizune herself wasn't too thrilled about the entire ordeal either, oh dear, was pretty much all she could say. Meanwhile, upon the forested border of Carter City, the hunchback old man formerly introduced as Gigi was face against a tree with his right hand in front of himself and his ever-present cane leaning on the other side. Oh yeah, there we go. MMHMM. I'm getting closer, Gigi grumbled as his hand quickened its pace, woo. Almost there. Just a little more. Just a few more hard strokes of that and I'm finished. AAAAAOOOWWW yeah. With that last of accomplishment, the wrinkly old man whirled around and revealed a ceramic bowl and grinder in hand, finally. My self-made, totally original, ultra extravagant, one of a kind, irresistible, can't find anywhere else, super, awesome coconut milkshake has at last been perfected, he howled despite his shaky old man disposition before downing his handiwork. Ah, now that's some good Gigi said before tossing the bowl out of sight, grabbing his cane and walked his way back to town. Well, sluggishly hobbled his way back to town, seeing as how every step he took had his hand shaking like a leaf. Woo damn. I swear it ain't easy being old sometimes. Really, it surely hasn't seemed to stop you before. A dark and largely gruff-toned voice came from the dark of the night. At this, Gigi frowned. Well. Look, was the horse shat out? Still alive I see, he hissed as he tightened his grip around his cane. Cut the crap. I know why you're here and you can just forget it. So long as he is still breathing, I will never leave him in peace. You stay out of my way. What? And miss all of this glorious drama. Nah. GJI thinks he gonna make a few more preparations for this little bash of ours, Gigi proclaimed before kicking his cane from off the ground. The mysterious old man caught out off-snatched the airborne flipping cane and fluently flung it like a dart into a seemingly random tree. At first, there was nothing but silence, until the dropping of blood could be heard. HHHHAH ha 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 a. A chip off that old block. Just like your father. Kuro. Get out here and face me like you got a pair, ya deluded fool. Or are you still afraid to even after all this time? Are you just gonna hide in the shadows all night? Gigi taunted. HMHMHMHMHMHMHM. Perhaps another time, old man. I have prior engagements to attend to. But don't feel left out. Soon enough I will finish what I started. With your heart. MWWAAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAH  'This, the mouse cackle faded into the night and left Gigi to himself. Slowly lifting his hand, the old man's cane suddenly spun out of the tree and slapped perfectly into his grasp. Damn it. It looks like that fiend is as strong as ever before. He's also rushing his steps. I can't allow the nine-tailed fox spirit to fall into his devilish clutches. Whatever it takes. Suddenly, Gigi felt a strong rumble into the ground. Too focused and tamed to be an actual earthquake. What the doochie, the old man said before turning his head to the direction of the town. Well, what do ya know? Back at the town, Tsunade was in the midst of recovering from the shock that she experienced when she saw a lowly little genin using the Rasengan. Although she thwarted Naruto's attempts with nothing but ease, and a little ground quaker, she was still very surprised that the blonde boy was able to even form the ball of chakra that could loosely even be called a Rasengan. And then, it hit her. Jiraiya, were you the one who taught this kid the Rasengan? She shouted to her former teammate on the sidelines. At first the said Toad Sannon was silent, but then he spoke. HN. That I am, he said. Shizune herself was more blown away by this than her mentor, Tsunade, was. Not only does this boy fight like a Fing demon, but he knows how to form a Rasengan too. The brunette medical ninja stared at Naruto with awestruck amazement. This boy. Somehow, I can tell that there is much more to him than he's letting on, if he can use such a technique. Shizune trailed off in her thoughts. In opposition to Tsunade was the downed Naruto, who was lying flat on his back, stared at the night sky to reflect on the humiliating defeat that he had just suffered at the hands of the slug mistress. His face was blank and unreadable, but he was also trying to fight off the massive headache that he was suffering at that moment thanks to a nasty finger flick from Tsunade, which was pretty much the equivalent of being hit in the face with a shovel. Naruto's thoughts and self-reflection were interrupted by the voice of Tsunade. What the hell is wrong with you, you old fool? The still mildly tipsy Tsunade shouted at Jiraiya. It's your fault, isn't it? You're the reason why this kid's so deluded. At this, Naruto's eyebrow raised slightly. Getting his hopes up like that. Filling his head with impossible fantasies and foolish ideas. Making him believe that he could actually be Hokage someday, the blonde woman carried on. Unbeknownst to the bunch, Naruto's hand slightly twitched out of pure impulse. I don't know where you obtained the absurd idea of teaching this worthless brat Yondaim's technique, but it was a severe waste of time. Just look at him. He can't even stand up, Tsunade insulted further while addressing the downed Naruto. Hey, kid. Why do you care so much about being Hokage? What could possibly be so great about? As though he were just waiting for Tsunade to ask that question, the blue-eyed genin rose to his feet with no signs of injury, surprising everyone to some extent. Well, Abar-chan, I'm glad you asked me that question, because here's my answer. I don't expect a heartless bag like you to understand, but I will say this. You can slam me down all you want. You take my dreams and smear them against the pavement until you're blue in the face, but it doesn't matter to me. People like you are all the motivation I'll ever need to getting there, just you watch. I'll never give up, Naruto strongly proclaimed with unfaltering conviction. Though Tsunade was just called the two of the many things you call her if you wanna she was a little too set on hearing the boy's answer to actually care, for now. At that moment, however, she was starting to grow a little interested in how absolutely dedicated her fellow blonde was to obtaining the title of Hokage. More and more, this attitude reminded her of precious figment of her past. Whether you or all of the world look down on it or spit at it, just remember one thing, Bar-chan, Naruto continued before he sped off his Konoha armband and gripped it within his hand with a masculine pride. To be Hokage, that is my dream. That was the second time that he uttered those words to Tsunade. Those painfully nostalgic words, to be Hokage is my dream. Oh, how she absolutely loathed herself for allowing those memories to creep back into her system after all of these years. Good thing she always had a scapegoat for just such an occasion, and at a perfect time and situation too. Tsunade smirked. Is that so? Well, maybe you should come back to reality. You don't even have all of the basics of the Rasengan down. How do you expect to surpass the Yondaime if you can't even master his jutsu? The blonde female mocked. Returning his opponent's smirk, Naruto lifted 3 fingers before himself. 3 days, Bar-chan. Just give me 3 days and I'll have the Rasengan down flat, he stated boldly. Tsunade's smirk widened after a brief moment of silence. You've got guts, kid. I like that. But if you're going to even come close to accomplishing your big dreams, you're gonna have to push. And I mean hard, the aged Sannon said with her unwaning smirk. Naruto held his tongue in check as he realized this fact long ago. He taught himself that hard fact at a tender age, so what the hell. So, Tsunade continued, let's make a bet. Hearing those all too familiar words, Jiraiya lowered his head into his hand. God. Not again. Some things will never change, I swear, the Toad Sage thought to himself. Naruto raised his eyebrow in confusion, so Tsunade verified. Since you're so dedicated, I'll give you a chance to prove yourself. Tell ya what, If you can master the Rasengan in exactly 1 week, then I will acknowledge your potential and skill as a shinobi. As an extra added bonus, I'll even throw in my lace, Tsunade confidently boasted. Oh, is that all? In that case. But, if you can't do it within the week, then you have to admit that I was right and that you'll never make it to being Hokage. Plus you'll fork over all of your money. Naruto smirked, simply grew at the challenging proposal. Well, at least I know I won't board this entire week. Fine, Bar-chan. The bet is on, he declared. Now his excitement was at an all-time high. He had been issued a nearly impossible challenge, and unlike ever before, Naruto urged to rise and meet it head-on. He would succeed. With those thoughts in mind, heart and soul, the determined blonde tied his armband back on his left arm and picked up his previously discarded red jacket. Flinging the garment over his shoulder, Naruto turned tail and started walking in another direction. After the boy had left, Tsunade's smirk disappeared, replacing it with a sad frown. That damn kid. Why? Connor out off front of Haruno home. Sakura stared at Ino with a sad face while the bleach blonde herself had her hands over and her face in tears as she feared the worst. I'm so sorry. I was being a selfish bee, Sakura. I should have never did what I did, Ino admitted. In all honesty, Ino had to throw her pride to the ground and bury it in order to even consider confessing to Sakura about what she did. After that, everything just poured out of her, how she felt, how much she's taken a liking to Naruto, how mad she was at Sakura. Everything. The more she went on, the sadder and more desperate she became. Sakura, please, say something, anything, Ino pleaded with her longtime friend. I never meant for any of this to happen. As Ino uttered those words, she saw Sakura bow her head as though she were unable to even look at her, thus invoking the message that she couldn't stand her presence any long. The turquoise-eyed Kunoichi's tears fell harder and she let her held sobs pour out. Sakura, she heaved before backing away. She believed that now, her and Sakura were finished. Biting down on her index finger, Ino whirled around and walked away from Sakura as fast as she could, unaware of the tears that she was also shedding. Ino, wait, the pink-haired female tried to say loud enough for her to hear but was unsuccessful. We both messed up. Come back. Near the academy grounds, Ino sat upon the park bench crying like hell because of what she had to do and what she had just screwed up. With her arms wrapped around herself in helpless confusion and sorrow, Ino inwardly berated herself for being so weak. She also reconciled that this would be the second time that her friendship with Sakura was destroyed because of a boy. It was like fate was at a constant standstill for the both of them, like they were never meant to stay friends, that something would always get in the way of that. Why God? Why? The sobbing Ino cried out. Why couldn't I see that what I was doing was wrong? What the hell are you talking about, Ino? You knew what you were doing was wrong, so what the F? What the? You're not God. PSH. I'm closest thing to a god you'll ever meet. B. Now get on with your pity party. Ahem, all things aside here, Ino was left in the darkness of her own doubts of what she would do now. Sakura surely hates her by now, and on top of that, Naruto probably shares those loathsome feelings for our little blonde. Now, more than ever, Ino felt helpless to do anything, and as I'm sure we covered before, she hated that weakness. If there was anything that Ino would never fall into, it was being a victim. Today was different. But, just as she was about to abandon all hope, Ino, a voice that she never thought she'd hear again, called out to her. The young Yamanaka whipped her head up and saw that it was none other than Sakura. Why you, was all that she could manage. It took her longer than needed to notice that her pink-haired counterpart was also in tears. Ino, I knew the whole time, Sakura cried before falling to her knees. The blonde's eyes widened through her tears. What are you mean you knew about what I tried to do with Naruto? She asked in disbelief. I was so angry with you, Ino. I wanted to hurt you, Sakura painfully admitted before looking at the ground again. I wanted to make you hurt so bad. Seeing Sakura in so much pain always made Ino break. It was a weakness that she had grown to accept over the years. She pushed herself off of the chair and knelt before Sakura. What do you mean? I don't understand. Sakura then fell into a series of painful sobs. When we spent the day together, I wanted to make sure that I made my move when you least expected it, but. God. What happened to us, Ino? How could I allow something to get between us in the first place, she cried. Ino was silent. I miss the way things were before. I miss how we could tell each other everything. We were so close, Ino. What happened to us? Sakura cried harder and almost hysterically. Hearing everything that Sakura had said came together like a kindergarten puzzle. Ino's intuition on the matter was bang on, but when nothing happened while they spent the day together, it was blatantly obvious that something went wrong, or right as the case may be. Ino's heart lifted slightly, yet her tears remained strong. Is that what you want, Sakura? Is that why you couldn't go through with it? The blonde said out off sobbed as a smile crept upon her face. The one word that Sakura wanted to say more than any other at that time was a simple and heart-filled, yes, but all that came out were overpowering sobs. At least she was able to nod though. Ino's heart soared. Here she was thinking that she had officially lost Sakura, but now look. There was still a chance. Oh Sakura, Ino yelled before allowing her joy to get the better of her, causing her to lunge forward. Contact. Breathing ceased, eyes widened and lips brushed. Yep. Definitely wasn't intended. Ino immediately pulled back with her eyes resembling dots and her hands covering her mouth. Sakura was left with her mouth hanging open. She slowly lifted her hands to her lips. Ino, she murmured without breaking eye contact. Sakura, Ino muttered as she was just as shocked at what she did as her friend was. With all of that pent-up excitement and tension that was welled inside them both, Ino and Sakura froze in place, staring at each other. Were there any doubts? Any private thoughts? Perhaps so, but if there were, then not a single word of any of it was spoken between the two. Not a word. They slammed into each other again and shared a second kiss. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.